I just say, why me? You know, that's what I ask myself. Why me? Why did it happen to me? So everything's been good for us, and then something like this happens. And I think it's beyond a lot of people's comprehension that you just don't understand. I just think it's something that people don't expect to happen.
This is Carla Yarborough. She and her husband own Spanky's Marshside in the resort town of Brunswick, Georgia. In August 2006, somebody hacked into their point-of-sale system.
What happened in our case was we were hacked into, and the magnetic data, which I didn't even know that we were storing in the hard drive, was taken, and then new cards were made and sold over the internet.
Carla didn't learn of the breach until February of the following year, so the criminals were in her system, freely taking personal information for nearly 7 months, and Carla had no idea.
It was very, I just felt like I had been blindsided by something because I just was not aware that that could even happen to me or to us.
A similar well-publicized case made headlines in early 2006. The victim was TJX, a company that owns such stores as TJ Maxx and Marshalls. They too were hacked into, and customer information from about 45 million credit and debit cards was stolen.
The PCI issue has really grown dramatically over the last several years. It's a lot like having a business that's operating on a tiny little island in the Caribbean. The skies may be clear today, but at some point that big dark cloud's going to swoop over, and here comes the biggest hurricane you've ever seen.
The raging storm that is now known as PCI Compliance is taking over the retail industry. We traveled the country to meet the major players in the PCI issue and get to the bottom of what must be done to fix this growing problem. It starts with the card brand, companies like Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. They are the first to learn if a breach has occurred. They look for common point-of-sale purchases on cards that report fraud. This is their way of learning exactly which businesses have been compromised. Next, the card brand notifies the acquiring bank, which is the middleman between the merchant and the card brand, and is in charge of the actual transaction. Once the acquiring bank informs the merchant of the fraud, it can be a downward spiral of confusion and financial frustration.
Visa's really taken a leadership role in the area of data security, and together with the other payment card brands, we created the Payment Card Industry Security Standards Council, which is the owner of the PCI Data Security Standards.
Formed in 2004, PCI DSS is a list of industry tools and measurements to ensure safe handling of sensitive information. It consists of 12 requirements and multiple sub-requirements to guide the building and maintenance of secure payment networks.
That's really what we're concerned about. We want to make sure that cardholder data is protected anywhere that it's stored, processed, or transmitted throughout the payment system. But what we're finding more and more frequently is that it's compromises of full magnetic stripe data, which is basically the data that's encoded within the magnetic stripe on the back of the card.
The information on that magnetic stripe is what is often being stolen, and this information is a cash cow for criminals. Unfortunately, many retailers don't even know they're storing this information on their point-of-sale system. The information isn't needed after a transaction has been authorized.
I think that when a compromise occurs, what merchants risk is the loss of trust of their customers, as well as the loss of the actual data that they may put at risk.
This stolen data costs a lot of money. Not only is the merchant responsible for the fraudulent charges criminals make with these card numbers, Visa may fine the merchant's acquiring bank because their customers weren't compliant in the first place.
It's not a matter of if they're hacked, it's just a matter of when.
Don Raber is with Chase Payment Tech, the largest acquiring bank in the world. As the middleman between merchants and card brands, acquiring banks are the first to receive any fines for non-compliancy. They normally pass these fines on to the merchant, but sometimes this is simply not possible.
The hacker has taken, say, 1 million cards. That is going to easily grow into a very large sum from the standpoint of fines. Typically, Visa or MasterCard fine upwards between $20 and $30 a card. If they can't pay it, then remember I mentioned earlier that Visa and MasterCard, they fine us first and we pass the fine on. If the merchant can't pay the fine, then we're left holding the bag. It's a huge financial risk for us.
In Carla Yarborough's case, her acquiring bank is making sure they avoid that risk by holding on to money that comes in from her credit card transactions.
They can take money and hold it because they may be fined by Visa or MasterCard, and if they're fined by Visa or MasterCard, they don't want to have to take the risk of getting their money back from you, so they're going to keep it over there and make sure that they those fines are taken care of.
As Carla sees less of a profit from her business, the next step she faces is a forensic audit. This is to determine just how long the criminals have been attempting to hack into the credit card information. The cost to Carla for this audit? $10,000.
We make it easy for them to understand something that's very complex.
Don Douglas is the CEO of ComplyGuard Networks, a company that provides PCI compliance tools and services to merchants and service providers. He says it's the smaller merchants that need to pay close attention.
Some people think these smaller breaches simply because they're not reported on a regular basis, just because they lack the flair of big retailers. But it's been tracked down that 85% of these data breaches come from merchants who process less than 1 million transactions a year.
Don says this misconception can cost merchants a lot of money, possibly even their business.
Some people are surprised how large they can be because they think, well, they're a tiny business. But the exposure of what the credit card fraud can cause on a national basis is tremendous. And so they're dealing with shock. A lot of times they're dealing with the fact that this may put them out of business.
Industry experts say these hackers are criminals who are a part of a sophisticated, organized group. On the systems they break into, they often leave an encryption to let other criminals know they've already been there. The message? Don't steal my work. Because of their cyber intelligence, these criminals are nearly impossible to catch.
The standards are getting tougher and stricter, and we're blocking the way that certain thieves are going about obtaining the data. Unfortunately, they're getting smarter too. And what they're doing is they're changing their methods to breach this data. And not only are they changing their methods on how they obtain it, they're more sophisticated in how they monetize it. So it's something that requires continuous testing, continuous monitoring, continuous work to make sure that you stay compliant. It's not a one-time event, and that's one of the things that people have to get clear in their minds.
It is sad because it's like the small business person is taking the brunt of the whole thing. Because somebody is out there breaking the law, we're having to pay for it one way or the other, if not by closing your doors, by having to pay out big sums of money.